Welcome to the Echoes interviews. My guest today is Pastor Jim Yates. First of all, my father, but he's pastor of Freedom Tabernacle Full Gospel in Osceola, Missouri, the former FGCI General Superintendent, missionary, a businessman, a rancher, father, grandfather, and most of all, he loves Jesus. So thanks for being here today.
Well, thanks for having me, Will. I'm honored to get to be on the interview.
All right, so first of all, we just want to kind of get into your history and what we're going to be talking about today with missions to the Navajo people. But I really want to know, just to give the people a baseline, tell us about yourself. What's your history with FGCI? How'd you get started in missions to the Navajo people? Just start there.
Well, actually, I had been working with Brother Manning in Haiti, and Pastor Gus Franklin and Joe Hammett had been working with the Navajo people, and Joe contacted me and asked me to drive a truck to the Navajo Nation and take a load of toys. So when I got there and saw what really the Navajo Nation consisted of, I almost felt convicted, because not that I'm ever against foreign missions, I'm all about foreign missions, but because we had been working on the foreign field and ignoring this mission field that's right here at home in the U.S.
Okay. And so I'd like to dig into that just a little bit more there. What kind of things did you see? What was the culture like? What were the people like?
Well, at that time, we're talking close to 25 years ago now. At that time, a population of 300,000 people, still 30% of the population did not have running water in their homes or electricity. The unemployment rate is 62% still today. The suicide rate is 11 times the national average among teenagers and 7 times the national average among adults. Very impoverished people, what we call now the forgotten people. They're surrounded by a very artsy, high-end communities like Flagstaff, Santa Fe, Taos, Sedona, that is very tourist-driven places. But in the middle of that, there's 300,000 precious people that live in the desert that's very impoverished and feel very forgotten.
So just to give a definition here, because I've heard people say that they define missions as foreign missions. But what's your definition of the mission field?
Missions is to minister to anyone who can't pay the bill. That's my definition. If that we go and hold revival and it's evangelism, those churches take an offering and they pay our expenses to be there. But when you go and do ministry and you raise your own funding and you go and give that as a gift to them, that's actually missions.
It's good. And so what year was your first trip?
The first trip, I believe, was in January of 2001.
All right.
No,
So
December. I'm sorry. It's
December
Christmas.
2001.
Yes.
So we're pushing 25 years.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And in that 25 years, what kind of changes have you seen?
Well, we have seen progress spiritually. Some of the cities that we work in, now when I say city, I'm talking about 5,000 people or less. They were very dark in the early days. They were almost demonic. They were very oppressed. And some of those places now, the church has dominion. The Chenli Church started with 6 ladies that couldn't speak English, and now it's very common for them to have over 250, between 250 and 300 people in a church in attendance on Sunday morning. God has moved, and people have welcomed us with open arms. Anybody that knows the native culture, they do not allow outsiders. They don't take well to them. But God's opened doors, and we're part of their family today.
Good. Something that you haven't mentioned, but I feel like the people would like to know this. Can you speak a little bit to the addiction issues that are going on there?
Yes, and now there is a meth addiction, and of course, an issue with fentanyl as well. but probably the main addiction still is alcoholism. And the Navajo Nation is a dry nation. For anybody that don't know, geographically, the Navajo Nation is about 25,000 square miles. It's the same size as the state of West Virginia. And it's dry. There's no alcohol sold in the whole nation. Legally. So many people resort to drinking hairspray or some kind of homemade drink to become intoxicated. And it's such a sad situation. It really does cause mental problems and a lot of brain damage and such as that. But one of the reasons that the non-believers, the non-Christians are so dependent on substance is because they have no hope. They spent today and yesterday and the day before sitting in the sand and without a job and without money, and they really believe tomorrow and the next day and the next year is going to be just the same. So that's one of the reasons that we want so badly to restore hope, to give them, to introduce them to Jesus and teach them that there is hope. There's better things ahead.
And, just going back on what you've said, if we didn't know Jesus and our culture was 60% unemployment and 11 times the national rate of suicide and rampant addiction, we probably wouldn't have any hope either. So how, you said you got started on a Christmas trip almost 25 years ago. What does this Christmas trip, this Project Navajo Christmas, what's that look like?
Well, I worked with a large denomination for about the first 3 years. They had a large Christmas celebration close to the interstate down by Gallup, and they would bring in 400 to 500 pastors and churches and people from the Navajo Nation and serve a big dinner and give toys to all the children. And it was a great celebration, and it's a great project that they still do. But after just a couple of years, I realized because of the vast size of the Navajo Nation, there's people that there's no way they could travel that far. It would be from like up at Douglas Mesa or Inscription House, those areas. It would be a 4-hour drive for them to come to get toys for their children. So I decided after much prayer that we would start going into the interior of the reservation and go into the remote places where no one else is going. And we wouldn't focus on numbers. If there's 10 children or 20 children, we want to go there and we want to have a party for them and we want to tell them about Jesus and we want to give them a new toy that's theirs. And we want to let them know that they're really not forgotten, that there's God's people really cares about them.
Okay. And so, you talked about how these people don't have jobs, they're hopeless, they're bound in addiction. Why a toy? Why not? I can see people asking the question of, why don't we give them more humanitarian efforts? Why don't we give them food? Why don't we give them jackets? Why don't we do that kind of thing rather than toys?
And we do take some winter clothes and things like that along when it's donated. But what we've seen is that children, they remember. Even though it might not bring them into the church immediately, they know that church, wherever it may be, one of the many churches we go to, that church is where those people really cared for me. And they gave me something, even as simple as a toy, and they asked for nothing in return. They just gave that to me, and they told me that there's this Jesus that loves me, that cares about me.
That's good. Do you have any testimonies about kids that were given a toy and how their life changed afterwards?
Certainly. Of course, most people's already heard this. One of the greatest testimony is, and it makes me get emotional, we have two of the young men that I know of for sure, I know where they are, that came through the toy line and received a toy, are senior pastors today. They pastor a church. And we have to believe that something as simple as a toy changed their life.
All right. I've been on this outreach, but I want you to kind of describe what it looks like to the people. What's Chin Lee Sunday morning of the Navajo or Project Navajo Christmas look like?
At the Chinley Church on Sunday morning, that is the last church that we do in this project in the 2-week outreach. There will be in the neighborhood of 300 to 350 people in attendance, with probably 200 to 250 children coming through the line receiving toys. The pastors there have told me that on average over the last 20 years, that each toy outreach that brings one family into the church. And that don't sound like a lot, but we'll do 10 churches every year in this outreach, and we've been doing it for going on 25 years. So that's 250 families that are serving the Lord today.
And that's, they're not small families.
No.
Most of the time. It's normally a very extended big family.
And not only that, it'll be generational.
Yeah.
Because they come out of the pagan, traditional Navajo, not religion, but pagan worship, and they come into Christianity. So it's not just them, it's the generations to come.
Okay. And you've been doing this for, like you said, about 25 years. In that time, you've planted a church. You were the Missouri State Superintendent, the Assistant General Superintendent of FGCI, and the General Superintendent of FGCI. How has FGCI been involved in this?
Oh, they very early, after I took an office with FGCI, the youth, Sister Liz Major, and many of the people, the pastors from FGCI, have done toy drives. They've sent, Sister Liz has brought youth teams every year. There'll be a van load of youth. The Navajo Christmas Project, it's a very labor-intense project. We drive in those 2 weekends hundreds of miles. I can't think of a church that we go to that's less than 50 miles between churches. And some of them are over 100. So we get there, we have to unload all these toys and set them up. We set it up like a store. They're not gift wrapped, and the children get to go through and pick what toys they would like. They're always accompanied by someone. So that's one of the major things that Full Gospel Churches has done is they've supplied not only labor, but they've supplied a lot of labor, actual physical help to make this happen. And they've supplied toys and they've supplied funding as well. But one of the great things has been their actual physical help that they've given us.
Okay. What's the expectation for this year?
We'll give toys to someplace close to 1,000 children in 2 weekends. We'll start on a Friday night. I believe the 4th of December. I'm sorry about dates, they leave me. The 5th of December, a Friday evening, and we'll do an outreach that night. We'll do 2 the next day on Saturday, 2 the next day on Sunday, and then that team will depart and come back to wherever they originate from. A second team will arrive on the morning of the 12th. We'll meet in Gallup, New Mexico, and buy a lot of toys and restock. And then that evening, we'll be back in one of our churches, an FGCI church out at Cottonwood, Alpha Omega Church, with Pastor Benny Jones. And then we'll do 3 churches on Saturday, and then end with the big church in Chinley on Sunday morning. And then that team, and of course myself, will return home after that.
Okay. So 1,000 kids over the 2 weekends. And that's December 4th to 15th, is that right?
December 4th, and we'll be back home on the 15th.
Okay. How can people get involved?
Well, we're getting ready to start putting things out on Facebook, and but there's many ways to get involved. You can go on the trip. We'd love to have you go along and see the culture and experience what we're really doing. You can have a toy drive at your church. We do have to pick up the toys pretty early. We try to have them picked up before Thanksgiving because we go so early in December. Or you can contribute financially by just dropping a check in the mail, or there's online giving. Of course, probably the most important thing is we need your prayers. We want to go there and represent Jesus well and want to be a light in the darkness.
Okay. So is there any encouragement you want to give the people that, may be on the fence about going, may be on the fence about getting involved, may, say, no, I'd rather do something else, or I'm not sure if this is really what I want to do, but if you want to encourage people to be a part.
First, I'm very big on that people need to do what they feel led to do. However, if you have any desire, make one trip, and if it's not for you, don't make another one. But I can't think of anyone over the years who's only made one trip. They always go back. Some people have traveled until they've gotten of an age where they can't travel anymore. And even at that, they still want to go. They still stay involved even if they can't travel anymore. So it's an experience. It really is. And there's no way to explain it without actually being there and seeing what we're doing.
When you were talking about that, this came to me, and this is probably should have been said earlier in the interview, but if anybody's experienced missions, and you said you'd been to Haiti and done missions work in Haiti, how would you say this compares to third world type missions?
Well, there are places in the third world that are far more impoverished than the Navajo people. But really, if you would look at the Navajo Nation, and if you would take out the automobiles that we have that look just like the cars that we drive here at home, you would not recognize it as America. There is some fast food places and some chain restaurants now in Chinle because of the Canyon de Chelly National Monument. It brings in a lot of tourists. But other than that, there's nothing that would make it look like that you're in America or in the U.S. except for the domestic automobiles. There's still horses and cows roaming the streets. People are still herding sheep. They're still weaving rugs on a loom. All the things that they were doing centuries ago.
Okay, and you said that there's been a spiritual change on the Navajo Nation. Would you say that there's been maybe an awakening or a revival that's gone on there?
There has been. There's medicine men getting saved. We're seeing a lot of things change in the Navajo Nation. But it's happened because we're presenting the love of Christ. There's been, not to make negative statements, but there's been organizations in the past that went there just to change them. And they're not ready to change. But when you introduce them to Jesus, the Holy Spirit does the changing. And that really is what has made the difference.
Okay. And my last question before the end here is the one I ask everybody. But do you think that the Church of America is in revival?
I do believe that we're having revival in America. I don't know that revival is going to be in the church. It very well may be in the church, but if it is, it will begin in what's known as very insignificant groups of people. I believe with everything that's within me that revival will not be able to be claimed by any organization, by any big name. It's going to be about Jesus. And that's the way it's going to happen this time.
All right. Do you have any encouragement for the people that you'd like to put out there?
I do. First, you're welcome to go with us to the Navajo Nation. We'd love to have you to be a part of what we're doing. But I do want to say that FGCI is advancing. It's doing great things. I'm so pleased to see what God is doing in our fellowship, and it's the greatest fellowship going. And I'm so glad to be a part of it. And I want to tell everyone, God bless you, and just keep doing what God's called you to do.